Hello and welcome back to Mark's NOTCAST. Today is Wednesday, the 11th of March 2026. This is number 485, my word. That's a big number, isn't it? And today I am talking about, as you can tell by the name of the episode, the t-shirt that I'm wearing, and undoubtedly the thumbnail, I'm talking about David Gilmour from Pink Floyd's third solo record called On an Island, which was released on about the 7th of March 2006, which means that this record is a staggering 20 years old, and it really doesn't feel like it at all. It feels like it's about 5 years, and knowing how quickly life moves, sometimes it's important to stop and take a break and to think about just how long certain things have taken. To me, I still remember things that happened 35 years ago as if they were yesterday. And so I certainly definitely remember this period and experiencing it as both a David Gilmour and a Pink Floyd fan in real time. It was the first time that I was able to participate, I think is the right way to describe it, in being a fan of David Gilmour. The first time I was able to see him play an album to a headline show. The first time that I was able to really be part of the experience. The last time that he released a studio record in 1994 was the Division Bell, which only played 18 or so headline shows at London's Earl's Court, which were priced at then astronomical £25, which inflation adjusted probably works out something about 80 to 90 pounds now, which was certainly way beyond my price tag and certainly nowhere near anything that I could afford at the time. But that was a long time ago, and I always thought, well, Pink Floyd will come around again, they'll be around maybe year 2000 or something like that. That's not quite how things unfolded. In 2001, and I think I have talked about this previously, I did see David Gilmour for the first time. He played the Meltdown show at London's Royal Festival Hall, captured on this DVD, David Gilmour in concert. From what I remember, tickets were £25, which I could more easily afford at that point. The venue only held 2,000 people, and it was, we were in about row G, row H or something, because in those days, when things were announced, people weren't as permanently online as they are now. It was, most people read about it by reading the Evening Standard on the tube on the way home, and I managed to get an email that told me that it was happening, and I bought a ticket at something like 10 o'clock in the morning, about 3 minutes after I worked out it had gone on sale, and then was able to get a row 10 ticket, or a row H ticket, as opposed to, if I'd read it in the Evening Standard, where I'd have ended up right at the top. And it sold out pretty quickly, this show, but to me, it was bizarre. I was seeing a member of Pink Floyd playing Pink Floyd songs live in the flesh in front of me. And at that point, by the way, Roger Waters hadn't toured the UK for 14 years. Pink Floyd hadn't played the UK for 7 years. In fact, they'd not played outside of London for something like 14 years. And I never thought that I would get to see anyone from Pink Floyd, not even walking down the street, let alone playing on stage those songs. And Pink Floyd was a band that I came to in 1989 when the Venice TV show was broadcast, 16th of July 1989, by the way, I believe, maybe 15th, and watched it on BBC Two, and then I was like, oh, I love this band. I absolutely love this band, but I never got a chance to see Pink Floyd headline apart from Live 8. Nonetheless, this was the first time, and I thought, wow, what an incredible experience. There's also a bootleg CD here of David Gilmour in concert with support live at the Meltdown Festival. I think it was supported by Sparkle Horse, and if I remember correctly, the guy from Sparkle Horse had an accident not long after and couldn't perform, or was severely restricted in his ability to perform. But I wasn't a fan of Sparkle Horse at that point, and still know very little about them. Nonetheless, this was my first live experience of David Gilmour, and I was just be stood in the same room whilst someone from Pink Floyd performed Shine On You Crazy Diamond, or Coming Back to Life, or Wish You Were Here, or Comfortably Numb. I was like, wow, what a strange and unexpected experience that was. And I thought, given his work rate, that it had slowed down, and it was he played 10 shows, maybe 8 between 1994 in 2006. In fact, I was at one of them. Was quite an experience indeed. Obviously, in 2005, and this was very unexpected, Pink Floyd reformed with Roger Waters to perform a short set at the Live 8 concert at London's Hyde Park. I was there, and I was, I thought I was quite near the front. I got about as close as I could, which was about a third of the way from the stage. But that still means that you're kind of like basically 2/3 of the way back at Wembley Stadium. The band are in a different postcode, possibly a different time zone, and with the difference between how speed, because there's the speed of sound and the speed of light. The speed of light is extraordinarily very fast indeed, something like 2.1 million miles per hour. Maybe miles per second. And sound works at a different speed. So sound works at about 688, 720-ish miles per hour. So, or maybe, miles per hour. So we were watching the band, and the video screen was showing things that were happening slightly before we were able to hear them, even with the speakers that were set further back into the field to reduce the sound delay, because the sound travels faster through the cables than it does through the air. But even at that speed, there's still a fraction of a second difference. And again, there was that moment where I thought, I'm watching Pink Floyd. I never thought I'd get to do this. Day before my 32nd birthday as well. So, wow, what a birthday present, really. I was to get to see U2, Pink Floyd, REM, Coldplay, Paul McCartney, George Michael, etc., etc., UB40 and Madonna. So maybe let's not dwell too much on that. And of course, there was an inevitable amount of rumours. And the rumours were Pink Floyd were going to play the Royal Albert Hall, and they were going to reform. And it got to the point where David put something on his website and said, no, all rumours of Pink Floyd performing either with or without Roger Waters are incorrect. They were sort of correct, but they weren't. Because as you can tell by the t-shirt I'm wearing that says David Gilmour, Royal Albert Hall, David did play at the Royal Albert Hall, but not in November 2005, and not as a part of Pink Floyd. Instead, what we had was the release of his third solo record, which is called On an Island, available here on vinyl and CD, both the best formats. And there's a number of associated releases that go with that as we're going to go through it. But primarily, I think On an Island is a record that I think is actually quite underrated on two grounds. One is everyone's going, why aren't you doing Pink Floyd? And well, the answer is quite simple, really. If you're in a band with somebody, then you should, and what's probably more important than anything else is that you should be able to get on well with them, be friends and friendly with the people in the band. Hopefully not too controversial to say, Roger Waters likes to be the man in charge, and David Gilmour doesn't like to be treated like that. He likes to be a more benign dictator steering the ship, as opposed to Roger. And also, one of the reasons why it wasn't called Pink Floyd was because when the Pink Floyd machine starts, this huge, massive engine kind of gears up, and suddenly there's a different artistic approach, there's a different sound, there's a different, obviously there's a combination of creative juices that work inside a Pink Floyd record. In this period, that would have been David with Rick and Nick playing in the band, and leading the creativity part of it. And obviously each one of those has a different flavour that they bring to it. So Pink Floyd, like New Order, are one of the bands that compromises the most in terms of finding something in the Venn diagram of taste where the three of them can generally agree. And then obviously once you put the words Pink Floyd onto something, it then becomes this enormous extra entity where you then think, well, I have to go and play Wembley Stadium now, I have to go and tour for 110 shows, I have to have lasers and inflatable pigs and 10 people in the band. And you end up kind of going, especially if you're in David's position at that point. And by the way, this album was released I think on his 60th birthday or the day before or the day after. So happy 80th birthday, David. Hope you're doing well, not that you're watching this. And then you kind of go, right, so if that's what you're doing, why would you want to do something that you don't want to do? If you don't need to do it and you're financially secure enough and have had enough success to be able to not have to compromise, why would you want to compromise your artistic integrity and your creativity in making something that you don't necessarily want to make. And having seen people, shackled to people that they don't like for various reasons in old age, if you don't have to do it, why would you? Life's too short for, bad music, bad food, bad people. And you need to kind of stick with and be around the people that make you feel comfortable and safe and that you enjoy being around. And in that respect, not to suggest for a second that Pink Floyd was not comfortable and not safe and not good to be around, but it's not where David was at that point. He wanted to make music for the sake of making music and make the music that pleased him and not necessarily think about the commercial considerations. Sure, he could have packed him into the aisles, sold out stadiums by changing the word Pink Floyd onto there and changing the drummer, but he chose not to, and that's a very admirable position to be in. So the album was recorded mostly at the Astoria Studios, which is still a houseboat that's moored just outside I think Hampton Court Station. Quite easy to get to if you want to see it. Effectively, you just drive down to an end of a road and then you walk a little bit and you're about 100 foot away from it. Well, more like 40 foot away from it because it's on the other side of the river. Or you can drive past where it's based and realise that you're never going to get in there. And the album was, by the way, largely written by osmosis. So like a lot of creative people, David writes when he wants to write, and he writes what he wants to write when he wants to write it, and you end up with short pieces of music. So you think about song construction for a second, and you might write a great verse or a great bridge or a great chorus, and there's a chorus that's on part of his most recent solo album, which Luck and Strange, which he wrote in the 90s, the early 90s, and he thought, I don't have anywhere yet to put it, and it took him 30 years to find somewhere to put it. And sometimes you just write little bits of songs and then eventually you kind of put them together and go, right, so this sounds like it's an intro, this sounds like it's a verse, this sounds like it's a bridge, this sounds like it's a chorus, and kind of work through those permutations. So you get maybe 3-4 parts of a song and you vary them, so you eventually end up with 6 to 8 parts of a song, and then you put each bit together, and each bit is like 45 seconds, and you end up with a 6-minute song. And it sounds like songs writing by committee, but at the same point it's also about finding what Kubrick called the submersible units, the memorable moments, and then kind of joining them together in a way that narratively complements and congregates the stuff so that the sum is greater than the end result is more than the sum of the parts. It's a multiplication as opposed to an addition of a section, and the chorus becomes more meaningful because of the sections that are around it that therefore allow contrast and compare, as old English exams would have had it. That's how On an Island was written, a series of 80 to 100 little bits of music that were stitched together to create an overall kind of tapestry of sound. And it was made of parts. It was a jigsaw that fit together, and sometimes it's not until you get one of the pieces and suddenly that's the connective tissue that you need to get you from there to there, and everything else suddenly joins together and works. And certainly in my creativity, when I'm writing music, songs, lyrics, etc., actually normally I start off in the middle and then I kind of fill in the sections either side around it. So normally there's a line in the middle of the song where I kind of go, that's the phrase, that's the thing that fits on my letterhead right now, that's the thing that I'm thinking about. And then you go, how do I get to that point, and where does that point take me from there? And that's how I think On an Island was written, was a series of pieces kind of stitched together to create an overall kind of piece of work which has a cumulative effect. And it's a really good album, very clearly not Pink Floyd, and I'll explain why it's not Pink Floyd if you want to listen, and if you don't, well, go and watch some guy talking about something else elsewhere on YouTube. But if you want to hang around, that's great, please do. That was more bitchy than it was meant to be, sorry about that, but I do these in a video verite fashion. I press play, I go, I yabber on, and then I stop. And I don't edit anything as I'm going through unless I know I'm about to sneeze, by the way. So in case you ever wonder why my little finger is pointing over there, pressing a button, it's because normally I'm getting a twitchy nose and I think I'm going to sneeze now and I better stop. So the album was preceded with a single called On an Island, and I don't own the single to On an Island because all it contains is an edit, which is an early fade, and the LP version of the song. There's no bonus tracks, no B-sides, there's nothing that's not previously, that's not in its substantial form on the album. And so that's why I'm not showing you the single for On an Island. What I'm showing you instead is the album itself. Here's the vinyl edition that was repressed probably about 2016, and here is the CD edition, which, by the way, points out very clearly David Gilmour, the voice and guitar of Pink Floyd. And just so that you know, Roger Waters' advertising said the creative genius behind Pink Floyd, because no one could really accuse him of being an amazing singer or a fantastic guitarist or bass player. He's a creative genius behind Pink Floyd, modest as well, and also kind of implies that there was no creativity in Pink Floyd once Roger Waters had left. I strongly disagree with that assessment. In fact, if anything, David Gilmour has been far more creative after Roger left than Roger has been after he left Pink Floyd. Nonetheless, we have On an Island, and here is the CD book pack version of it, which I think is the only version that was released at the time of release on about the 6th or 7th of March 2006, containing a lovely and very different aesthetic, by the way, to the Pink Floyd records. So you have a different approach there. The picture is effectively a man alone, very clearly kind of pointing out this is who he is. They then have lyrics for each one of the songs on the album, accompanied by photographs, and I can't quite tell who that is. First track was called Castell Horizon, by the way. Castell Horizon was a instrumental, lovely, gorgeous instrumental piece, the type of thing that Gilmour has done many, many times during the course of his career and opens most of his records with, is an atmospheric instrumental of kind of like ecstatic keyboards and keening guitar that's kind of aspiring towards something else and invokes an emotion. It was named after an island in Greece, which, and I've never pronounced this before, is called Castelloroso, which has a population of 594. And I understand David and his wife Polly Sampson have spent a lot of time on the island of Hydra in Greece, which is pretty near to there. And then we have the first track, On an Island, which, by the way, features some alumni from the rest of David's career. And I'll kind of go into what that is, because the vinyl edition is probably a little bit clearer on there. The vinyl edition, we have this gorgeous gatefold in here with David and Polly. Polly being David's lyricist. And before we get into the vocal part of it, I'm going to kind of take umbrage with some sexist people that are kind of saying things about how David has his wife writing all his songs for him. I mean, fundamentally, and I don't think David has ever made any secret of this, lyrics are not his strong point, and working with people to write lyrics for him has always been a part of his both solo and latter period Pink Floyd existence. He's able to articulate the ideas that he has, and then somebody else turns them into something that works in a lyrical form for a record. And so without kind of much further ado, really, I will say there is nobody that's probably more qualified to write lyrics for David than Polly, and there is also nobody that I think understands probably his mindset better than him, and ultimately is able to articulate the thoughts, fears and ideas that he has in the conversations. By the way, this vinyl, I should point this out, has a gorgeous poster. I'm not sure if this is still up, but again features David there with a couple of his three of his many guitars in a poster form that you can hang up if that's what you really want to do. And then on the B-side, on the flip side of that, has again a full colour illustration of the lyrics from the album. So if you ever think, what would Pink Floyd have sounded like after the Division Bell? Well, you're not far off by listening to this album, I will say. I also have a Royal Albert Hall poster, that lithograph that they sold at the show. I bought some discounted tour stock at the end of 2006. That lithograph cost me £6. Nowadays they'd probably charge you 50 quid for it. Inflation is a motherfucker. And yeah, there's the vinyl edition of the album. So by the way, this, as far as I can tell, this being the 2016 version, is almost identical in every way that I can see, apart from possibly the Matrix number, to the original 2006 vinyl. That is staggeringly expensive at this point. It does have a a Matrix number scratched out on it, but I'm not bothering to look at that because I'm not the kind of guy that does that. I'm not vastly interested in whether something is an original pressing or a repressing. It's all about the music, man, and that's what it is. And sometimes you can only get the music on an original pressing, or there was never a repressing, and sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, and you know, either way, that's how it goes. So with that in mind, and hopefully dispensing with the quiet misogyny that targets Polly's lyric writing, we go to the title track from the album, number 2, On an Island. On an Island features Rado Close on guitar, who was an early member of Pink Floyd in, I think, 1966, and Rick Wright from Pink Floyd on keyboards. And the song about On an Island, to me at least, the lyric kind of talks about the moment when there's a couple that's together and the rest of the world disappears, everything falls away, and the only thing that really exists are these two people, and the rest of the world is kind of outside of that bubble, outside of that experience, you know. And if you've been in a couple, then you'll know there are things that the couple experience, the combined and shared mythologies, the ideas, the jokes, the experiences, the feelings, the physical experiences that nobody else has ever seen. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, you know, there's a version of you that exists with that person that nobody else will ever see. Only the person where you are their partner, and only they will see that version of you. And the version of you that exists after that is the version of you that has been changed in some way by that relationship, because every relationship we go into, we're a different person from when we leave that relationship, you know. And I mean, certainly, and I very rarely talk about my personal life on here, you know, assuming that I've got one, that every relationship I've been with, I've taken something permanently from that in a very positive way. I've had some experiences, I've had some feelings or some emotions. There have been, you know, those people have been part of my life and been on that journey with me for that period of time together. And they have also, you know, experienced me as a you know, a partner and a lover, hopefully. And this song is about that. I think it's about being on that particular island where nobody else can possibly be. You know, that we lay side by side between the moon and the tide, you know, mapping the stars for a while. You know, let the light surround you, we're halfway to the stars. It's you know, a very interesting lyric about that, and it's, I think, more romantic, but not in a soppy way, not in a Stock Aitken and Waterman way, but in quite a mature approach to being able to be with a person and to have that experience, and to go, that moment can never be undone, it can never be taken away. It existed, it happened, we were there. And that's one of the things about history, is people will tell you about, you know, moments when you've been in the room and you've experienced certain things, like, oh, it never happened like that. And it's like, don't lie to me about me. I was there, I know what happened. To quote the book about Trump's first term, the room where it happened is important. The third track, by the way, and On an Island, is lovely and gorgeous, and it's more, I think, romantic, more languid than most Floyd. It's not got that sense of universal kind of grandeur. It's a very intimate song. And The Blue, the third song, is actually about a place called the Blue Cave, which again is in Castelleroso, the island, which apparently has, you know, wonderful colours, but you can only access it at certain times due to the tide. Again, Rado Close of early Pink Floyd plays on it, but also it's, you know, Rick Wright plays on it, I think, and it's also inspired by effectively kind of drifting on the sea. And one of Rick Wright's kind of, you know, pastimes was to take to a yacht and kind of sail the high seas of the world, and to kind of go through that process. And by the way, you know, The Blue has effectively a duet with Rick and David, both singing simultaneously and both mixed together as a blend of voices. But also the lyric is quite obviously about that sense of serenity. So sometimes if you're in nature, or if you're on a boat and a calm sea, you'll feel this sense of just kind of like just being surrounded by peace. And even though underneath the water, the teeth of the sea, to quote the French name of Jaws. You know, if you're in the sea, you know, you're in the place that has 400, 500 years old sharks. You're in a place that has weird blobfish, strange things that will kill you as soon as look at you, all those type of things. And there's, you know, death and destruction, and the human food and the food chain all underneath you. But at the same point, at the surface, what you're seeing is a kind of almost a calm, placid surface of gentle waves kind of moving forward. And that's the kind of sense of peace that the Blue kind of talks about, is you know, talking about effectively being on the sea and experiencing that. And I should also point out that as people get older, generally, and certainly I'm, you know, in my 50s now, you're at the point in life where you put up with less crap, and you put up with less fake drama, less empty drama that you don't need. You kind of just go, yeah, I find my people, they're good people, I'll be with them. And, you know, if the people don't share your values, then you shouldn't be around them either, because they're not your people. And if you can't rely on someone around you to be, you know, safe and trustworthy and honest, then you probably shouldn't be around them either. And so, you know, over time, you kind of, like Michelangelo said about the statue of David, is you chip away all the bits in your life that don't look like you, you know, and sometimes that's painful, and sometimes that means that you have to make a break with the past. And I think more people should be doing that, really, is you kind of surround yourself as best you can with a sense of peace and people that make you happy, as opposed to people that you know. And the Blue kind of has that lyric in there about waves roll, lift us in blue, drift us, seep right through. And it's a very kind of calm, relaxing song, but it kind of talks about that. Now the next song, Take a Breath, is considerably more aggressive, actually, but it also follows up from the themes that are in the Blue about water, except Take a Breath lyrically kind of talks about mortality, about the swimming in the sea and the fact that you've got to breathe through there. There's an idea about being pulled underwater or drowning. You know, there's a you know, the lyric about when you're down is where you'll know yourself, and if you drown, there's nothing else. And when you're lost, you need to find yourself, and then you'll find out that there's no one else. You know, it's a lyric about, in some respects, around potentially about drowning, potentially about being subsumed into something, or being caught into a drama or a pull of something that you don't necessarily agree with or want to be part of at all. And it's a, you know, a not a banger, because, you know, David's too old to do bangers. He never got particularly fast. But to talk about, you know, things in quite an aggressive fashion. And the aggression, I think, in Take a Breath reflects the power of the water, the power of nature, and that you do have to respect it. So even while the Blue is quite a languid, placid song about the calm of the sea, at the same point, you have to respect it. And it's a great song. And by the way, the rhythm section on Take a Breath, as I understand it, is Guy Pratt of both Pink Floyd and many other records, but also, and I'm just checking here, Ged Lynch on drums. And so that actually means that the electronics rhythm section from 1999's Twisted Tenderness album is playing on that, which is quite an experience when you think about it like that. Not something that, you know, if I'm listening to Make It Happen or something off the Twisted Tenderness album, which, by the way, is very underrated in my opinion, you kind of go, wow, that, and then you kind of go, yeah, it's a, you know, touch of that's in there. Red Sky at Night closes side one, and Red Sky at Night is an instrumental with, I think, David playing, I think, is it saxophone, clarinet, something like that, I can't remember, a wind instrument anyway, saxophone, guitars, is who he's got in there. And then, you know, side two opens with This Heaven, and that's a great lyric, actually. This Heaven, it's very, very satisfied, and that sounds, you know, judgmental, but it doesn't. Again, this album is about David's search for peace and calm and serenity and companionship in a world that sometimes doesn't feel like it's doing that. So the lyric is You know, I need no blessings, but I'm counting mine. Life is much more than money buys, and when I see the faith in my children's eyes, you know, and then the idea is that, you know, this earthly heaven is enough for me. And, you know, again, that's talking about the themes I was talking about in The Blue and elsewhere, which is you surround yourself with your people that you feel are kindred spirits, that treat you with care, consideration and respect, and vice versa. And, you know, people that you kind of, and one of life's people. And I read a really interesting interview with Brett Anderson, and someone asked him, you know, what is the point of life? And he went, well, to make the world a little more beautiful in a small way, to be a plus sign. And you know, that's what you do. You surround yourself with people that have the same kind of morality as you, the same kind of ethics, and then, you know, you work together to you know, put gentleness and loveliness back in the world. And I understand that if I looked out of the window right now, and I'd kind of see obviously nothing but black, but I go, the world is really unhappy, isn't it? Politically, war, everything. The world is very divided. The world is very confrontational. There's a lot of division. Algorithms drive that, and then somehow, you know, you've got to surround yourself with the right people, and then you're never more than 10 seconds away from something on Instagram that's, you know, somebody doing something that's just hilarious, like dressing up their dog as a crab, or actually, you know, my favorite Instagram post recently was Hackatee Dog's joke about the owls of Yorkshire, which I'm not going to repeat because it can't be bettered than Hackatee Dog. But again, I was watching that, I was going, that's what you need more of in this world: silliness and loveliness. Smile is track 7. Smile was the first song from the album that anybody heard. First premiered, by the way, as an untitled track in the Meltdown show. And Smile has a lovely story that sits behind it. The opening line, "Will this do?" It was basically called Donkey Poo for a long time. Donkey Poo, because it rhymes with "Will this do?" And you know, as David writes music and melodies, he doesn't necessarily write lyrics. And Smile was the first song that was premiered from the album. On it, by the way, we have Willie Wilson, who played on David's first solo record in 1978. But also the lyric is about satisfaction and how that works. You know, the idea of, you know, would this do to make it all right when sleep has taken you, where I'm out of sight, I'll make my getaway. You know, the idea of going all alone, though you're right here, it's time to go from your sad stare, and leaving's a better way to find my way home to your smile. And it's a sad song because it kind of, there's a recognition that sits in there that sometimes couples argue, fight, and sometimes you have to end something because it's not going to make anybody any happier. And having to know when you're in that situation and not having commitment bias is quite important. But at the same point, there's a message in there around your happiness is important to me. And you know, I think it's important to bring things to a close rather than continue with something that may make everybody unhappy. And there's just like a gentle air of going, maybe that's the way in which we can smile again, which is, you know, an important thing to do. And as I said earlier about, you know, Jake, there's not enough smiling in this world, and there needs to be more of it. Track 8 is A Pocket Full of Stones. And A Pocket Full of Stones is again, lyrically, effectively, I'm kind of thinking about where people skip stones upon the water, and you see kind of like the stones kind of bouncing off the water like a bouncing bomb, and that sense of going, actually, if you've just got the time to just stop and to think and to enjoy, that in itself is something quite important. And the lyric kind of is about looking back over life, I think, to an extent, and going, did we have wonder? Did we have beauty? Did we have amazing experiences? And if not, could we then kind of help those towards that place? What changes do we make in this world? You know, and it's a lovely song, but it is very definitely a different pace and a different speed and a different direction from Pink Floyd's vast grandeur. It's very intimate. It's like, you know, whispering in your ear. And we have, I think, effectively Yeah, we're coming to the end now. I think I've skipped through Then I Close My Eyes, which is an instrumental. Can't talk about the lyrics in that. And then the last song on the album, which is Where We Start. And I think it's deliberate that there's the picture there of David and Polly next to the lyric of Where We Start, because the idea of going where we start is where we end. We step out sweetly, nothing planned. Along by the river, we feed bread to the swans, and then over the footbridge to the woods beyond. There's kind of like a sense of where the circle of life, or as Spock said in The Simpsons, life's eternal ballet. And then, the day is done, the sun sinks low, we fold up the blanket, it's time to go. We waltz in the moonlight, and the embers glow, so much behind us, still far to go. The idea that history is always being written, whether you're there or not, and there's more experiences to have, more beauty to find in the world. And overall, I mean, it's obviously the most contented album that I think David has made at this point in his life, but also it's the most mature. It's kind of looking back over his life and the future that there is, and coming to the conclusion that there's many good things in this world, and you have to find them, and you have to find the beauty that there is, and experience that as it goes along. And this was released obviously on honour David's 60th birthday. Let me just quickly say, this was a postcard that I think was in the lobby of the Mermaid Theatre in 2006. There's a number of other tracks that came out from the album at around about the same time, and obviously I'll talk through those because that gets quite complicated. There was a lot of formatting that went on around this point, but the first thing that happened around this period was that David played the Mermaid Theatre in London, and that was on the 7th of March 2006, and I had the incredible privilege, and it was genuinely incredible to be there to see David premiere the album live. I'd been listening to it a little bit in the day, but premiering the album live publicly at London's Mermaid Theatre for the BBC, and he had a competition on his website. Effectively, it said, if you're amongst the first people that comment, you can come. And I was like, I commented straight away because I was permanently online at that point. We went and we sat in, I think, the front row, pretty much in between Rick and David. So David's touring band at this point was almost everybody from Pink Floyd. So it was David Gilmour, Rick Wright, Guy Pratt on bass, John Carrin on keyboards and guitar, Dick Parry on saxophone, and the two new people were Phil Manzanera from Roxy Music on guitar, and Steve Stanislaw from Crosby, Stills and Nash's band on drums. So effectively, what you were missing from that experience compared to 1994's Pink Floyd was Nick Mason on drums and Tim Renwick on guitar. But to me, it was a continuation, an evolution of what Pink Floyd was. You could clearly see the lineage in this compared to where Pink Floyd are going to become smaller, more intimate, and I think just as valid. And it was an astonishing experience to be able to sit there and see David Gilmour play guitar so close that I could see the hairs on his arm. I could see the wrinkles on his face. I could see, Rick playing keyboards 10 feet away from me. This room is not, if I can compare to where I'm sat now to where, the wall is over there, it's not far. I was probably about as far away from Rick and David playing as I am from, the door. And it was an astonishing experience, very intimate, very special, very profound to an extent, but also very human at one point. And not that it's necessarily mentioned in here, by the way, because this is the live FM broadcast. It was broadcast on BBC television and also on BBC Radio 2, and sections of it were released on the live releases that went with the album. Is that there was a couple of things which weren't broadcast. David went for a wee in the middle of the set, very important part of the show. They had 2 false starts for Comfortably Numb, and then actually they came back and they performed On an Island in the Blue again because they felt that they hadn't quite got it right to start off with. But it was an astonishing experience. What a way to open the tour, and you know, my first kind of experience of what was effectively, you know, the next step in the evolution of David's career. There was a number of other releases that came out at around about the same time, and I'll kind of talk through those now whilst we're at them. But it's important to go through is that a second single was released from the album. This was Smile, backed with Island Jam. Island Jam was, I think, a Best Buy exclusive disc of effectively a studio jam that was available to download for free from his website. Released on a limited edition CD single, and also, especially if you're especially trained spottery, there was a copy of the card sleeve edition of this. So the card sleeve of Smile, which was numbered alongside a sticker which you could stick onto your CDR. So you downloaded the single and Island Jam, and then you burnt it onto a CD at home using that. This is my copy. I've even tried to copy the handwriting there, and then you put the sticker on and you kind of go, I've got a homemade CDR of a numbered limited edition of Smile in a card sleeve, and that was a lovely little thing. I'm reminded of when Paul McCartney put a tour program free on the seats of the show. Every show had every seat had a tour program on, I think, the Tripping the Light Fantastic tour, and that was quite an experience as well. David went on tour, and as he went on tour, he performed a number of shows that were recorded and released as it went through. The first and most obvious of those, well, not most obvious, but the first one of those was released on the Live and In Session limited edition DVD that came packaged with American double disc CD and DVD editions of On an Island that was released mid-tour. This features a number of tracks. Take a Breath, Astronomy Domine from the Abbey Road session, so this was released late 2006, and a 6-song in the studio live session for AOL. Remember AOL? I think they closed recently, which was in the days when every company was trying to become a media conglomerate and to own absolutely everything. The AOL session featured pardon me, in the studio live session versions of On an Island, This Heaven, Smile, Take a Breath, High Hopes and Comfortably Numb, and it's well worth getting and seeing, and I think the AOL sessions are on YouTube, and if they're not, why aren't they? The tour stopped off in the UK and played a number of shows, the last 3 of which were filmed and released as this DVD. Remember That Night, David Gilmour live at the Royal Albert Hall. I was able to get tickets on the ground floor for the last show of the tour in the UK, which comprised a number of special kind of things that went around that. And the DVD was made from all 3 nights and kind of features effectively the whole of the show on the first disc. The second disc features live material from the Mermaid, so there's a couple of other shows, some music videos, an Island Jam and a number of documentaries. It's well worth getting, by the way, if that's the kind of thing that you're into. And it's, it was, again, I was on the ground floor of the Royal Albert Hall. There's the set list has happened, and well, I'm going to have to show you something in a minute, because that set list is not the set list I've got. And then obviously we've got the photo there of the performers, some photographs from the tour, photos taken by Polly, and CDs, laminates, all those type of things. It's a lovely snapshot of a period that can never be replicated. But to see David and his band, including Rick, performing at the Royal Albert Hall, I was like, I never thought I'd get to experience that. It was transcendent in some respects, but also one of the other things about it was that obviously David Bowie's last stage appearance in the UK and his last released live appearance is on this DVD. He's guested on guest vocals on Arnold Lane and Comfortably Numb at the end of the show. So this show featured a huge number of rarely played Floyd tracks. Some shows featured Astronomy Domine for the first time since 1994. Others featured, Fat Old Sun coming back to life, High Hopes, Echoes. I saw Echoes at the Royal Albert Hall from the ground floor with all the goddamn lasers on the planet. Wish You Were Here, a cover of Find the Cost of Freedom, and Arnold Lane and Comfortably Numb. And by the way, the best heckle I've ever heard happened just before Echoes at the Albert Hall, where somebody up in the guards went, "Give us a ping, Rick!" And unsurprisingly, the next song was Echoes, and he went, "Ding!" We got a ping, which was a very, very, it was like wonderful. I was like genuinely like, this is astonishingly good. Remember That Night had a number of other releases that went with it. Here's a promo CD sampler of 3 audio tracks from it featuring Comfortably Numb. So again, I think this is the only place where you can get Comfortably Numb with David Bowie as an audio CD playable release. There was also the single of Arnold Lane, which is here. I've got a copy somewhere else, but I can't remember where I've stuck it right now, which was released on a 7-inch in the UK and a CD. This features Arnold Lane with David Bowie on vocals, Arnold Lane with Rick Wright on vocals, and then a cover of Syd Barrett's Dark Globe by David. Syd died mid-tour, and after his death, David started playing that song, Dark Globe, which is a gorgeous and sad song. At the show, a couple of things happened. The first one is I bought a t-shirt. Hello. There's a tour programme, which is here. This was discounted. I think this was £9, I think. And again, it tells you about everyone who's in the band and what they do. Sorry, I should go a little slower, but I'm aware of the march of time and the fact we're already 46 minutes into this. I think this was the last time Dick Parry toured. There's Guy Pratt. There's Steve DeStanislaw there and then there's some photos of David alongside his tour. But something else happened, and on the last night, and here is, by the way, David's stage-used set list. So this was at his feet at the last Royal Albert Hall show. This is the one that he used, and we ran up and got it after the show. But as you can see, that's the first part of the set that we've got. And the second part of the set is there. It features Great Gig in the Sky. The only song performed at the Royal Albert Hall isn't on the DVD because I don't think the vocalist was sufficiently rehearsed. But for the encore, and bearing in mind the show started an hour later than normal because there was, I think, some university graduations. So they had to take all the equipment out in the middle of the night, stick it back in as soon as the graduation ceremony had finished, and play the third show with a very compressed sound check. So David came on stage at around about 8:30 and he finished at around about midnight-ish, I think. And I stayed up all night. And the reason I stayed up all night and the reason I stayed for the encore was because in the encore, Nick Mason from Pink Floyd came on stage and played Wish You Were Here, Find the Cost of Freedom and Comfortably Numb. It was the last time that Rick, Nick and David performed Wish You Were Here and Comfortably Numb in public. And as they're going, I'm watching fucking Pink Floyd at the Royal Albert Hall playing Wish You Were Here and Comfortably Numb. And it was, it's my second and my last Pink Floyd show. And I was like, what an amazing way to go. And frankly, I had to stay up all night and get the first train back at about 6:10 in the morning, but it was worth it because I saw Pink Floyd when Nick came on, we lost our decorum and a few people wandered right towards the front, including me. And I remember I was kind of standing in the aisle going, I'm watching Nick and Rick and David from Pink Floyd play Comfortably Numb at the Albert Hall. God damn. That's one of those moments that you take with you for the rest of your life. It's like going, oh yeah, I saw the Beatles, I saw Mozart, I saw Pink Floyd at the Royal Albert Hall. Wow, what an experience, very meaningful, I think. And obviously that was captured, although Nick's part wasn't, on the Remember That Night DVD. And here is some booklets that were distributed at the theatrical screening of Remember That Night at the Leicester Square Odeon in 2007 on, I think, September the 6th, 2007. David played a live version of Castella Horizon to start off with. Then there was a Q&A, and then after the Q&A, his band, including Rick Wright, came on stage and performed Island Jam for the only time in public. And also, by the way, that was Rick Wright's last ever live appearance, because he died of cancer on the 15th of September 2008. And I was there, you know, £20 to be literally in the front row. That was really, really something. The tour wasn't finished then. There was more to come. And the tour concluded with a one-off kind of radio session performance at the Abbey Road studios, which were released on this David Gilmour 4 tracks live from the Abbey Road, a sampler which you got when you made a donation to the Public Broadcasting Service of America. This features the Blue, On an Island, Take a Breath and Smile, by the way, one of which I think Astronomy Domine, which I don't think is on here, was on the DVD of Remember That Night. The last release from this period, which was announced and released in September, well, maybe August 2008, is David Gilmour live in Gdansk, the live album. And this show was never intended to be released. It was filmed in standard definition, but I think, if I'm really, really honest about it, I think it was released because David knew that Rick was very poorly, and Rick had cancer, and he wanted to release a live album that captured Rick's last headline live performance in front of an audience. So this is the last time that David and Rick played a huge number of these songs in public, or ever, in fact, was released as this is a special version that has 5 discs in it, 3 CDs and 2 DVDs. You open this up, God knows how expensive this is. I know the vinyl edition will probably cost you the same as a small car these days. Let's go through all of the goodies that are in here, but let's go through the audio to start off with. Obviously we have 2 CDs there, which is the full live show, apart from, I think it's Fat Old Son, I think. Yeah, no, there's another one, I think. What's the Deal, actually, is not included on the CDs, but it's included on the DVD. And What's the Deal was also included on a Best Buy exclusive CD. We also had disc 3, which is the DVD, live in Gdansk with an orchestra, which features most of the show. Disc 4 features 3 songs from the Mermaid Theatre, 2 songs for AOL, 3 songs at the Abbey Road, and then 3 barn jams. These barn jams later kind of turned into, at least some of them turned into other songs and other albums. One of the barn jams actually became the track Luck and Strange from the 2024 album, and then also a 5.1 version, audio only, of the On an Island album. Disc 5 is a CD of bonus tracks from the On an Island tour. By the way, that's the heating going on, and that is recorded in Vienna, Paris, Munich, Glasgow, Florence, Manchester, and Venice, yeah, and Milan, which is basically an assortment of live tracks from elsewhere in the tour. If you get one version of Live in Gdansk, this is probably the one to go for, the 5 tracker. It's got pretty much everything on, but it might be a bit expensive and a bit rich for your blood these days. Re-release it, guys. By the way, people going, why isn't it on Blu-ray? It wasn't shot in high definition. A lot of it was shot for use on the video screens, because the show in Gdansk was to about 100,000 people, and the video screens did a lot of heavy lifting because of so many people being there, and therefore it's not, you can't release it on Blu-ray because the quality just was never there. It was never in the camera to start off with. The Live at Gdansk also features, and I'm going to hold this out here, a couple of posters. Here's one of the live band from the time, and the other one of David looking over the Solidarity Gdansk Memorial there. We have a nice deluxe booklet, which was released in the period, featuring, well, quite a lot of, and a guide to everything that's on there. This is a real monster of a package, by the way. It took me about all day to go through this, and then obviously extra material that kind of showed what was happening as it went along. So that was quite a thing, really, is to be able to have that, and then some text. David generally doesn't like text about the band in these releases, This text kind of talks about the story of the solidarity movement, and the song "A Great Day for Freedom" was performed at that show. The last time it was performed, because "A Great Day for Freedom" from the Division Bell was written about the fall of the Berlin Wall, and therefore also included the Gdansk memorial there. So it was performed live at Gdansk shipyard in August 2006. I did think about, could I get to a show on that tour, and I just couldn't make it happen. I mean, obviously if I could I would have done, but I couldn't. The last part of the Gdansk kind of set is this envelope full of stuff, and I'll quickly show you. We have a David Gilmour guitar pick, which of course I'm not very good at playing, a fake kind of artist pass that's numbered, so this is number 315 of the set, a sticker, which this one is an all access areas pass, obviously not relevant anymore because the gig's 20 years ago now, a reproduction ticket from the show, and a number of postcards. There's a kind of giveaway kind of flyer thing that you might have been able to find in shops in and around Gdansk to kind of let you know that the event was happening. That's a photograph of the orchestra. That's a photograph of Rick Wright there. God, I wish it got to grow old and made more music. This one is a selection of David's guitars in Gdansk. This one is David Gilmour on stage at the sound check, and this one is David and Polly on stage at the sound check, and then the last couple are the fallen shipyard workers monument in Gdansk, and then Lech Wałęsa, the co-founder of Solidarność, a political party that came and challenged the communist rule in Poland at the time. That is the live at Gdansk box set, and it is a monster. It really is. Obviously someone somewhere is going to go, desperately needs a vinyl repressing. I agree with you, I absolutely do, but I'd rather focus on what we have as opposed to what we don't have. You know, this tour is incredibly well documented. There's a lot of material that came out around it, and it's very good indeed. So that's my wrap up and talk through David's On an Island era, and personally it was a real privilege to be part of it, to experience it, to see it, to feel it happening in front of my eyes, and to understand kind of what all this stuff was, because I'd never really, to me, Pink Floyd were a dead band because I'd not got the chance to experience them in real time before my eyes, but I got to experience this, and that is quite something indeed. This period, it was a real privilege to be able to feel so engaged and involved, and to be part of it, and to have those experiences, and to see those songs performed live by those musicians. That really was something quite important and quite big at the time. So with that in mind, thank you for watching this. If you've watched all of this, if you are only just coming in at the end, you've missed all the good stuff. Go back to the beginning and watch it from the beginning. But hopefully it's been an entertaining trip through this period of David Gilmour's career, and I cannot believe it is 20 years since it's happened. My good God, 20 years. Jeez, that's going to make my brain hurt even just thinking about it. It really is. And so I'm going to wrap up here, and just to thank you again for watching this, and hopefully it's been useful, interesting, and there'll be some links underneath that you'll be able to look at them and go, wow, more things I haven't seen. So there you are. Thank you. Take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful. I will see you soon. Thank you, and good night.